Good morning, everybody. So what I want to do in this quick lecture is I just want to go through how to do a lab write-up. So we're in the middle of our first lab, and we're going to be, you're going to have to do an official lab write-up for all of your labs. So I want to show you what I expect and give you an example. So I actually pulled a lab from one of my students last year, and just to give you an idea of what I expect. Okay, so this is the format I want, this is how I want it, and this is the expectation. Okay, so first of all, the labs have to be typed. Okay, the very first thing you're going to do is, I would do it in Google Docs, please. It's the easiest to upload to Google Classroom. So open a Google Doc, and the very first thing you're going to do is I want to see name and what block you're in. I need the title of the lab. Okay, so those are the first three things that you do. Right, and if you don't put those in, expect to lose points. All right, this is just, it just helps me keep track of things. All right, so now when we actually get into the lab write-up, all right, the very first thing you're going to write is a purpose statement, and a purpose statement is just a very specific sentence or two telling us exactly what we did in this lab. So for example, this lab was a titration of vinegar. All right, and this person wrote, the purpose of this lab is to find the molarity and the percent by mass of acetic acid in vinegar using titration. All right, that's a perfect purpose statement. It's just telling me exactly why we did the lab. It should be no longer than 2 sentences. Then what you should do is you should skip a line, and you're going to be the list of the materials, and I need every single one of these. Now, sometimes it's the list in the lab, but sometimes we change it. So whatever we use is what you have to include, right? After the list of materials, you're going to do a procedure, and the procedure is an exact step-by-step what we did in the lab, okay? And I want it, so if you can see here, I want it labeled step 1, step 2, step 3, and you tell me exactly what you do in each step, right? Now, I'll tell you how I grade your procedure. Okay, I'm going to read it like I've never done the lab, and I'm going to ask myself, could I do this lab from your procedure? All right, so you can break it into many steps as you want. All right, so he was a little bit more in each step, but he covered everything that we did. So you go step by step. Step number 1, step number 2, step number 3. Step number 4, step number 5. And you might have up to 20 steps, okay, however you want them, all right, but I want them in a list form. I do not want them in paragraph form, all right, so you can see your steps. Now the next thing you're going to do after your procedure is you're going to give me data and observations. If there's data, I want it in a data table, so this is beautiful, right, you can see this. If there's graphs, you need to put those in here, all right, all sorts of stuff. Right, so there's your data and observations. If you just have observations, make sure they're nice and neat, okay, and I can read them. Okay, this one had multiple data tables, all right, so this is very good. All right, after you have your data and observations, okay, this is where you're going to put your questions. All right, if there are pre-lab questions, they go first. Okay, they should be in complete sentences. Okay, so in this lab, okay, this was an issue. Okay, they must be in sentences. Okay, so you're just going to go ahead and do your questions. You do not have to write the question itself. Okay, just the answers in complete sentences. Okay, so these were pre-lab questions. Then he got into post-lab questions. Okay, and he had nice full sentences here, which is great. Okay, then there were calculations, okay, and he typed out his calculations nice and neat. When you have a calculation, you must give me 3 things. You must give me the formula, you must give me a substitution, and you must give me an answer with units, okay? There are 3 things that you must give me in a calculation, okay? Formula, substitution, and an answer with units. Okay, so we did all these calculations. Finally is the conclusion. Okay. Conclusion is minimally a page long. Generally, they tend to be longer than that. Okay, so for this lab, he wrote page and a half. Okay, no bigger than 12 font, please. Okay, it's not about length. It's really about what you're talking about. Now, what goes in the conclusion? Okay, well, you want to talk about what you're doing in the lab. Okay, and you want to define things that you should include. You should define terms that we're using in the lab. You should be talking about why we're doing the lab. You should talk about what you learned in the lab. You should talk about how that lab relates to class. Okay, if there are hypotheses and things that you did in the lab, you should talk about that, how you came up with them. You should talk about error and possible reasons for your error. You should talk about how, really what you're doing, it's a discussion about how the lab relates to the material that we're talking in class. Okay, so if you throw out a chemistry term that we're using in the unit, okay, you should include an explanation of that term. Okay, so for example, in the chromatography lab, that we are doing right now, if you start talking about chromatography, you better be talking about what chromatography is, define it, what it separates, okay? So then you're gonna start getting into mixtures. Well, you should define what a mixture is, and you should define what type of mixtures there are, homogeneous and heterogeneous, right? So it's a complete discussion about what's happening in the lab. Okay? And you can see this one. It's organized into paragraphs. I expect good writing. I expect it to be spell checked. Okay, those are all things that are just basic English writing. Okay, it needs to make sense. You need to organize your writing. All right, so not only do you have to write the full discussion, it has to make sense and have good flow through your conclusion. At the very end, okay, I'm encouraging you, or I want you to take pictures during the lab, okay? Take them, you can have your phone out, you can take pictures, exactly document everything that you're doing, and the pictures are gonna go at the end, right? And they don't have to be this big. You can put lots of pictures on one page, all right, and then label them figure 1. So if you look back through his lab, he refers to the figures. So I would look at figure number 1, flip over to here. Okay, here's some more pictures, figure 2, figure 3. Okay, so your pictures go at the end, label them, and you can refer to your pictures right throughout your lab. Don't put them in the lab itself, always put them at the end. Okay. Now, I've made some decisions about due dates, okay, and this is kind of hard because some people have already done the chromatography lab. They started on Monday. There are other people that won't do it until a week from tomorrow. So due dates were difficult to come up with. So what I decided to do is that I will set one specific due date for everybody. So I think, I've already posted it in Google Classroom, I think the chromatography lab will be due for everyone on October 1st. And what I did is I went 1 week, I gave 1 week from the time the last group does the lab. Now that means some people have 3 weeks to do the lab write-up, some people only have 1 week to do the lab write-up. What I envision with the labs is that will change as we do labs. So some people this time have lots of time, some people only have a week. Okay, hopefully next time that will move around a little bit, and the people that had a long time will have a shorter time, all right? That's the best I can do. You may turn them in early, okay, so as soon as they're done, okay, as soon as you're done, so let's say that you've already done the lab, you have the lab write-up done, you can turn it in now. It just won't get graded until after the October 1st deadline. Okay, so I think that's what we're gonna do. Okay. So this is an overview of a lab write-up. Okay, if you do have any questions, just throw me an email or come to office hours and I can help you answer those questions. All right, Have an excellent afternoon, and we will be seeing you soon.